Now today's masterclass we learn about the mandibular nerve. Okay, so the mandibular nerve is the third division of the trigeminal nerve, and it is a mixed nerve, and it is the largest division of all trigeminal divisions. Okay, now let's look at the course of the mandibular division. Okay, so after it exits the trigeminal ganglion, it is running along with the motor root of the trigeminal nerve. Okay, so together with the motor root, mandibular division exits the cranial cavity through the foramen ovale. Remember M-A-L-E, right? So M was mandibular division of the trigeminal nerve. So here is where it is exiting the cranial cavity through the foramen ovale, and from there, after it exits the foramen ovale, within the intratemporal fossa, it gives out a few branches, and based on the branches we can divide the nerve into three parts. First we have the main trunk, then we have the anterior division, and then we have the posterior division. Okay, so here is the main trunk, and then we have this is the anterior division here, and this is the posterior division here. Okay, so we will learn about the branches of mandibular division in these three divisions. Okay, so first we'll learn about the main trunk branches. Okay, so the branches from the main trunk are, first we have a branch to the tensor veli palatini, then we have a branch to the medial pterygoid, we have a branch called as nervus spinosus, and then we have a branch to the tensor tympani. So what happens is that after the mandibular nerve exits the foramen ovale, it gives out a small branch here. Okay, and this branch again enters the cranial cavity through the foramen spinosum. Okay, it enters the cranial cavity through the foramen spinosum, and it supplies the meningeal layer. Okay, so the nervus spinosus is arising from the mandibular division, and it enters the cranial cavity back through the foramen spinosum. Okay, and it gives a nerve to the medial pterygoid. Okay, so this nerve to the medial pterygoid will have two more branches, that is branch to the tensor veli palatini and tensor tympani. Okay, so these are the two tensor muscles that are supplied through the main trunk. So as you can see, we have one sensory branch and we have three motor branches. So a small mnemonic to remember this is TMNT. This is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Okay, so TMNT for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So the branches of the main trunk you can remember TMNT. Okay, now let's learn about the anterior division. Okay, so the anterior division gives out these branches. First we have a masseteric nerve that supplies the masseter. Then we have a deep temporal nerve that supplies the temporalis muscle. Then we have a long buccal branch, that is a sensory branch to the inner cheek region, that is the buccal mucosa. And we have a lateral pterygoid branch to the lateral pterygoid muscle. So as you can see, the anterior division gives out most of its branches to the muscles of the mastication. Okay, so lateral pterygoid, deep temporal and masseteric nerve were the branches to the masticatory muscles. The other masticatory muscle, that is the medial pterygoid, got a branch from the main trunk. Okay, now let's learn about the posterior division. So the posterior division is the largest of all three divisions of the mandibular division. Okay, so the posterior division gave out these branches. First we have the inferior alveolar nerve. So as you can see, this is the inferior alveolar nerve. Then we have the auriculotemporal nerve. Here is the auriculotemporal nerve. This nerve loops around this artery, that is the external carotid artery. Then we have the mental nerve. So the mental nerve arises from the inferior alveolar nerve. Okay, the mental nerve exits from the skull through the mental foramen. The inferior alveolar nerve continues as mental nerve when it exits through the mental foramen. Okay, so here this inferior alveolar nerve will continue anteriorly and exits through the mental foramen and become the mental nerve. Okay, Then we have a branch called as a mylohyoid. So here will be the mylohyoid. It is not there in this diagram, but please remember there is another branch called as the mylohyoid nerve that is arising from the posterior division of the mandibular nerve. Okay, so this mylohyoid nerve, as the name suggests, supplies the mylohyoid muscle that is in the floor of the oral cavity. Then we have the lingual nerve. So this is the lingual nerve. As you can see, this lingual nerve will give sensory supply to the anterior 2/3 of the tongue. So this was about the mandibular division of the trigeminal nerve. Now, associated with the trigeminal nerve, we have a few ganglia. Let's look at them. They are 4 in number. So the first ganglion associated with the trigeminal nerve is the otic ganglion. Okay, so the otic ganglion is related to the auriculotemporal nerve, that is the part of the trigeminal nerve. Okay, so as you can see, this is the otic ganglion. It is receiving preganglionic fibers from the glossopharyngeal nerve, and the postganglionic fibers run along the auriculotemporal nerve and they supply the parotid gland. Okay, next we have the ciliary ganglion. So the ciliary ganglion is associated with the nasociliary nerve, that is branch of the ophthalmic division of the trigeminal nerve. Okay, as you can see, this is the ciliary ganglion here. Then we have the submandibular ganglion. So the submandibular ganglion receives fibers through the lingual nerve. Okay, so here is the submandibular ganglion, here is the lingual nerve. Okay, and this is the ganglion that supplies the submandibular and sublingual salivary glands. Okay, and the final one we have is the pterygopalatine ganglion, also called as the monkey ganglion or the hanging ganglion, and it is related to the maxillary nerve within the pterygopalatine fossa. Okay, so here is the pterygopalatine fossa and here is the pterygopalatine ganglion, and these are the ganglionic fibers